I'm Chip Townsend, and this is the Team Chip Podcast. Conflict is a culture killer.
99% of the time, it's been like, well, that was a whole lot easier than I expected.
Don't spread that poison. It's venom that you spread through the organization. When there is one toxic person, it will affect everybody. All right, guys, how is it going today? I have Miss Glyn Ann back with me today. We're going to do a duo episode today, and we're in I believe our fourth episode of handling conflict or maybe conflict resolution. I'm not a certified counselor, but we've done this for a long time, 30 years of operating the business and seen all kinds of just different situations, scenarios and issues and things like that come up.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be talking about kind of staff to staff. Now, I think these episodes, and you may not agree, but I think they kind of stand alone, right? So each one is good. But I just wanted to remind you that we do have some episodes on parent to instructor conflict and different areas of conflict that you can look at and just maybe get some nuggets on, how to handle those situations when they pop up, especially as a martial arts school owner, business operator, whatever that is. So
Absolutely.
Today we'll be kind of talking staff to staff when you have a couple of staff members that aren't meshing or they're bumping heads or you're having issues, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How are you today, by the way?
Great.
You're great? Are you ready to get this show on the road?
I am. Let's
Awesome.
go.
Let's get going. So, well, why this matters to every school owner, really business operator, period, is conflict is a culture killer, right? Conflict it kills morale. In a martial arts school, it can kill the student experience. You got two guys in there that are working together to teach, but they don't mesh well. Maybe they're not getting along. And in my humble opinion, most of the time conflict is just something that needs to be dealt with, right? It's not permanent. And it can be caused by a lot of different things, but it's something we got to hit head on kind of.
Absolutely. And, there's another concept of if you don't actually lead through it, the culture suffers. And what's meant by that is if you just kind of sit back and allow it to stew and to fester, then you're almost by not getting, I don't want to, involved is a little bit like I'm stepping right in the middle of it. But if you want to just kind of let it kind of play out,
right,
then you're almost You're
almost feeding it.
Yeah, you're just allowing it to. It ends up being something that people hold grudges, and it can just be yuck. Instead of going, you know what, we're going to deal with this because, I don't want to get into the rest of the part that we're talking about, but yeah, you've got to take care of it.
Absolutely, and it's kind of like this: if we know what's happening and we don't address it, it's like we're okaying it.
That's right.
We're saying it's okay to have the conflict and have the problem, and at the end of the day, I really think most conflict is really simple and boils down to some really simple things. But the goal today is just to kind of give you some tools, some nuggets to lead with confidence. And I'm going to say this very clearly, keep the emotion out because emotion can make it really difficult. I've had situations where I get pretty flustered and I'll just tell Glyn Ann, look, I'll deal with this in a couple of days. I'm going to let it set, think through it, kind of cool off a little bit internally. And I think that's a wise thing to do in any kind of conflicting situation. And I also want to say this. I think, as martial arts school owners, people sometimes, look at us like, oh, you guys are, talented or you're fighters or, whatever their perception of us is. You must enjoy, butting heads in conflict. And the truth is, the very transparent truth, I avoid conflict. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I don't feel good about it. I don't like it. I don't like conflicting with parents or students or staff conflict. I don't like any of it, but let's be real. It's just going to happen.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
Don't want to beat that up too much, but be prepared to hit it, deal with it. And I can't count how many times there's been some sort of conflicting situation that we see it, we sense it, we pick up on the cues, we kind of know what's going on and okay, we got to step into this and make it happen. I don't think there's ever been a time that we've stepped in with intent, with grace and patience, that we haven't come out feeling better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But going in, you feel almost sick to your stomach.
Yes, you absolutely do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I dread having this conversation. And 99% of the time it's been like, well, that was a whole lot easier than I expected because we end up putting, all of these, what could go wrong. And I do think that there's a level of being prepared, But I think that there's also a whole lot of that. What is that fear acronym? False expectations appearing real.
Exactly. I was actually just thinking about that exact thing. We build it up in our mind like it's going to be this awful
It's going to be
thing.
this throwdown, and actually it's like, hey, I just need to ask you a question about something. So,
And so many times, if it's you conflicting or two other people and you're kind of having to intervene a little bit, they even kind of go, thank goodness, finally somebody's going to kind of help do something with this,
I just
right?
needed to get that off of my chest, and sometimes that's really all it is.
That's right.
You know, like different ways that conflicts can happen. You know, you can just have people that absolutely have just a personality conflict.
Absolutely.
That their just personalities kind of rub each other raw. They teach differently. You know, one is more upbeat, one is more reserved. One wants to do this, you know, whether it's a game or a, you know, whatever drill, and the other one is like, oh yeah, but I wanted to do, and so those can be, that's a way that things can happen.
Absolutely. Poor communication. I think that's the one that really comes to my head the most. And I've probably said it thousands of times, honestly. You know, two countries sitting side by side will go to war over just a lack of communication, over a lack of talking and either making some sort of compromise or just understanding the other person's perspective and going, oh, that makes sense now. There's really no need to fight over this. Another thing too is ego, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you know, we really have tried, we've kind of figured this out pretty early that we can't let, first of all, we don't refer to our students as, hey, blue belt, because that was whenever we very first started, that was very common in martial arts. I don't know that it is anymore, but people were referred to as their rank. You know, like, hey, orange belt, come over here, instead of actually acknowledging that people have a name, and calling them by their name. But that rank was then that was your person.
Right.
You know, I'm a black belt. I'm a second degree black belt. I am a third degree red belt with four stripes and a purple tip and it all of a sudden that becomes who you are. So I think of all of those classes that we would take belts off, set them to the side, and it was like, okay, now you have nothing to show on exteriorly for what you've put in.
Right.
Now it's time to actually let it come out.
Yeah. And by the way, that is an absolute amazing drill. If, you know, you've got a little bit of maybe ego going on or like, you know, jockeying for position, everyone take your belts off, go lay them at the side. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to line you up by who performs.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I better get on my game.
Busy.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And it should be easy. If you have a red belt and a yellow belt, your red belt should easily outshine because they've had the most experience and be able to get to the front where they belong. Right. So, man, that's a fun reminder and drill too.
Absolutely. And I think that the thing that's missing in that is so, across every martial art that I can think of, humility is like a core piece of that. And whenever you start having those, this was my class, or I'm the blue belt or the black belt or the whatever, then all of a sudden that humility, you just set it over in a suitcase over on the side and like that doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
And just that clarity and like, okay, am I actually representing what I'm supposed to be teaching?
Right. Which is humility.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
self-control.
Yeah.
And being considerate of everybody around me, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk real quick, you know, like personality conflicts, like how could that be a problem? I just kind of go back to one of the first personality tests I ever took was the DISC. I think it's Briggs, Myers, I can't remember, but the DISC personality. And I don't even remember exactly what they all are, but there's like dominant, influencer, stable, and you can't remember the last one. And I'm not going to get into the personality test so much, but if you have a person who is a dominant personality, they're like an achiever, a go-getter, they're like dominant, and that's kind of their presence. And you have someone that's on that stable end who's much more like detail focused and kind of quiet and back. You put them in the same room together, and it can cause some disagreements and lack of understanding. And something we have found, and we do personality tests with our team and kind of do some activities around those every so often. It helps when they know each other's personalities, right? And so that can be a way you can kind of get around that a little bit. But back to the personality, and when I mentioned that, I thought, you know, that one might be a kind of like, well, how could personalities be a problem? It definitely can. But it's because there are some different types of personalities. Some people are extroverted, some are introverted. Some are, like I said, kind of dominating in their presence. They're influencers. Man, I almost hate to use that word in today's world with social media, but and then some are more kind of quiet, reserved, introverted. Anyway, you mix them wrong, and that can create some problems. Poor communication. That's just not establishing our expectations. And we've talked about this a lot in these conflict things because it's huge. Expectations and the rules and regulations, et cetera, have to be very, very clear. And then kind of back to the ego and turf wars, this can run into, and I think it's this can be real in any industry where I've seen it in the military. You have the enlisted airman, and then you have the young officer, and there's a conflict because of their structures of rank. And I think it can fit, with martial arts. You have that black belt who, just earned their black belt, and maybe they're just earning their first leadership recognition. And then you have the guy that's, a 5-year black belt, and they can kind of butt heads a little bit, like who's going to take the lead in this class or things like that. So anyway, just kind of some of the causes of conflict and things to watch out for. So what kind of things do we need to watch out for to see this coming? Because we know prevention's the best medicine, right?
Absolutely. It's that we talk about, we were specifically in a class last night, and there was a time where you had everybody line up, and you really gave, it was in an upper level class, and you gave like the expectation to like the first 3 groups. And then you just stood back and were like, do you guys know why I'm standing back and why I'm kind of looking at you? And, the look was like, actually, no, I don't. And the reason that you did it, because you explained it to him, you were like, I'm wanting you to read the room and see what's coming and do it before you have to be asked.
Asked to do it. Right.
And so and that's part of this, it's seeing those eye rolls that maybe weren't direct, not like I'm rolling my eyes where they could see it, but I'm seeing that whenever you turned around and they didn't see it, that you rolled your eyes at something that they said.
Absolutely.
Or it's the cold response, or just yeah, okay, whatever. You start to, you listen to that tonality, you listen to those little cues, and you're paying attention to that kind of stuff. It's that reading the room and being being aware of what's happening.
Yeah, and it can be kind of a low energy type thing in meetings too, where you come together to meet, and you notice when a couple of people are in the meetings, the energy's kind of low, the room feels a little stiff and dreary, etc. Another thing, and I absolutely can't stand this, but it's gossip. You overhear walking down the hallway one person talking about another, and we have a pretty clear rule. I might catch you once gossiping, and I'm going to give you a warning. The second time, you're gone. I don't care how long you've been with us. You do not gossip. You don't vent out and down. If you have to vent or gossip, for lack of better words, really it would be kind of make a complaint or whatever. Take it up to someone who can do something about it.
Right.
And don't spread that poison. It's venom that you spread through the organization. But those are things you're looking for, people that are avoiding each other, maybe they kind of eye roll when one says something the other one doesn't like, and just things like that. So,
well, and you can also pay attention to whenever someone in a meeting is like somebody else is kudoing them, and you can watch the response. And it's not like the way that we're discussing this, it's almost like we're like sitting back and watching everything and that is not what I'm trying to say at all. But it is just being aware of and not being distracted yourself, but actually paying attention to, like, whenever this person is getting praised for a great class, or, doing something specific with another, a parent, whatever, that you're watching the responses of other people, and you can kind of see, like, other people like smirk or
maybe wilt, right?
Or like, well, I don't agree. And that you don't necessarily have to bring them both together and say, okay, I noticed whenever I praised Bob that Susie got mad. Which you can say, hey, there was you had a funny look on your face. Just want to say,
make sure is
everything okay? Is there something I'm missing? And just
Absolutely.
asking those questions, because sometimes it's like, oh no, my cat stepped on my foot. Sometimes it's nothing. And then sometimes
Right.
there is more to the
More
story.
to the story. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the keys here, we've talked about, kind of what, some things to be looking for. Make sure you recognize it, see it coming early on. How do we address it? And that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah.
We're not going to see an issue between two people and just yank them together and have a talk.
Right.
Maybe the one that's doing the eye roll or, shrugging off something someone else says, maybe we grab them. And I know for me, I don't look at them and go, hey, why did you do that? I just ask the question, hey, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
And, many times, oh, I'm great. Well, are you sure? Is everything okay? Are you missing anything here that we can do for you? I try to assume some ownership and open the door to let them maybe say something that I can grab a hold of and go, hey, let's talk about that a little bit, right? Instead of finger pointing and blaming, try to kind of draw that out in the way that you ask question, what's going on, or is there anything that you need? And I think another key is meet one-on-one first.
Yeah.
Don't, I'm sorry, babe.
No, you're good.
Don't publicly reprimand.
Right.
And, it's kind of back to that public praise, private reprimand. I'm just pulling to the side, right?
Sure. And I think, one of the things, this is common sense, but just to, are you okay? Versus, hey, is everything okay?
Tone.
That sarcastic, are you okay? Because if you say, are you okay? I'm fine. But hey, is everything okay? Is a completely different question. And there's
Absolutely.
compassion in your voice, because the other thing to really kind of keep you centered is probably not the right word, but I don't have a better word, but keep you on the right track in all of this is to remember you've probably known them for years.
Right.
If they're in a position of leadership, you've known them and you know that this is out of character.
Right.
This is not, something's off. You have a relationship with them, but you can't, it's real easy when you do have a relationship with somebody to take that for granted, and that
Right.
they'll know
Absolutely.
my intent, but actually no, your voice and your tone and the way you ask things can completely, you can scrub that by the way you ask those questions.
Right.
You can't assume that they know that you know all of that.
Absolutely. Another thing to think about kind of related to that too is sometimes, like especially in the martial arts world, we may have an instructor that's been training with us, which we have quite a few for like 20 years.
Right.
And this conflict is between them and someone who's known them for like the last 4.
Right.
They just don't know them as well, right? So,
Right.
that can be tough too whenever you're trying to mediate and solve the problem, but you know the whole story with this guy and kind of the whole story with this guy. And some of that's private because
Right.
they've shared things with you through the years. So you
Right.
got to be very cautious with that as well, that you don't expose things that don't need to be exposed,
Right.
and that you're respectful of those boundaries. But the big things are don't ignore it when you see it.
Right.
Have a quick little one-on-one and make it not an accusatory, but a, hey, how are you? How are you feeling? Is there anything
Right.
that we're missing? Is everything okay with you these days? And sometimes, believe it or not, it's simply, hey, my dog got ran over yesterday. And you go, oh gosh,
Yeah,
I get that. I get that.
A lot of the times there's something else going on in the background that is contributing to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, once we begin to address this, not only are we trying to solve the problem, but we're also trying to coach them on how not to have it again in the future.
Right.
So we're trying to teach them how to handle themselves in a professional manner, and not again, have that same problem or have problems like that again. And so make sure that you speak very direct to them. You're very respectful, using kind of I statements, like I felt, don't, I know that's a little tough, but like, I wouldn't pull someone to the side and go, well, we thought you did X. It's, hey, I kind of felt like maybe something was a little off today. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And make your focus on, and this is hard, but trying to solve the problem, not blame anybody for the problem. Right.
Right. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Pull them to the side, catch it early. Even though in your stomach, it may be even kind of turned over like, oh, I see it and I don't want to have to deal with this. But go ahead and do it. It'll be worth it because if, again, like Glyn Ann said, if we allow that to stew over time, a tiny problem becomes a monstrous storm inside your business.
Absolutely.
And then you have to make some tough decisions at that point. So
Well, and I think reminding everybody, I think, those expectations being constantly discussed in your, whether it's your staff meetings, your instructor
Right.
meetings, your trainings, that our primary focus, I mean, we literally did this yesterday. I'm just going to remind you, the priorities are the people on the mat come first.
That's right.
Those,
Well,
and we're here for them. It's not about you.
yeah. Well, I'm huge on having some orders of priority in my life. And, one of the ones that we talk about is, and I stole this one from Dave Kovar Hanchi, we're martial artists first,
Right.
we're business people second. We're martial artists first, we're teachers second, and we're business people third. I apologize. But we're martial artists. And if we do that well, we'll teach better and we can learn how to teach good. And if we do those two things well, the business kind of takes care of itself, right? Another order of priorities that's directly related to this that I've actually been reinforcing with our team recently,
Right.
is the people on the mat in our building are number one priority.
Right.
The people at the sidelines are our number two priority.
Right.
That's typically a parent, a sibling, etc. The people that are calling and texting or walking in the front door kind of become, I would say walking in the door would be 3 and 4 would be the people calling, texting, leaving messages. We can always come back to that. So having those clear priorities with your team will help them with their expectations and understanding with each other as well,
Right.
and how things can be handled. So an example, let's say that maybe Glyn Ann is approaching me on the mat and I'm having a kid that's literally, just hurt himself. And I may ignore her for a moment and say, excuse me, boom, and take care of the kid, because that is the priority, because she may be walking on the mat with a secondary issue, right? And I know that's a little, maybe a little hard to get your head around in ways, but the people on the mat are number one and they're first.
Right.
Around the edges, the fringes, sidelines, the talking viewing area. Number 2, someone that maybe walks in for a trial or, just to get information, kind of number 3, because the people that are on the mat, they're paying already.
Right.
And so, but anyway, kind of beating that up, but have an order of priorities in your life. And I'll say there's one other area, and there's several other areas, but another one is like, personally, God is first, I'm second, my wife, my kids, that really helps me to ground myself and make sure that we're, I stick to my expectations and hold myself accountable well.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And remember that everybody in the building contributes to the culture. And that's a big deal. Even from your youngest leadership team, even your students contribute to the culture. If I have a student on the mat every day that's acting a fool, for lack of better words, and I am allowing that, that's affecting our culture, right? People need to see that I will step in and go, hey, let's work through this and figure this situation out. We've got to watch out for, that continued kind of negativity. There have to be consequences so that people understand we are going to work to control the culture and keep it positive.
Right, for sure.
So there are times when their headbutting gets tough and they're not giving in, and you got to step in a little bit hard, right? I'm going to give an example. Recently, I had 3 young men working through something, not a problem, but just working through some class planning and some different things. And they all kind of had their own ideas and were kind of getting a little head bumpy back and forth. And I'm peeking in on them, checking on them as they're working through this process. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I did is I walked in and I just stopped them and I said, hey guys, hold up for a second. I said, you, sir, what do you want for your students right now? What do you want? And they said, well, I want my students to be successful. Okay, what do you want? I want them to be great martial artists and successful. What do you want? Well, I want them to have a great experience. And I said, do you guys understand that we're all on the same page?
Right.
Like 95, 98%, we all want the same thing.
Right.
And so I stepped in. I had to step in a little hard because it kind of was boiling a little bit and boiling up. And I was like, I gotta pull this back down and calm it down. But just reminding everybody sometimes that we're all on the same team with the same common mission. Mm-hmm. And we need to try to be on the same path to get to that goal, right?
Right.
We don't have to be exactly on the same path, but we need to be pretty close, right?
Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you just have somebody that just is resolute and they are not willing to budge, and they just don't want resolution. Mm-hmm. They don't want to work it out.
Right. And when that happens, you got to make hard calls.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to make a cut. I have found in the times, and there haven't been that many, and I think not because we're good, but because we raise our staff a lot of times for a long time.
Right.
So we already know, but every now and then you kind of get side swiped a little like, whoa, where did that come from? And how did that happen? But when you make that hard call, and obviously the hard call would be cutting that person from the team, right? When you make it, I've been kind of amazed in ways, and you may disagree, but at how the whole atmosphere and culture kind of gets back in a positive mode again and kind of lightens up.
Oh, okay.
It's almost like everybody takes a breath, and you kind of go, okay, I wasn't particularly wrong in having to make that tough decision and make that cut.
Right. Well, and sometimes the make that cut. Sometimes they they cut themselves. Sometimes they go, you know what? I think I'm gonna do something else. The thing that's always not always, but that's not humorous but interesting about that is the amount of times that they come back. Sometimes it's years later that it's like, I didn't realize what I had. I didn't realize the environment that I was working in, and why did that one little thing or which
Right.
get blown so out of proportion. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway,
one of the things that's happened with us several times through the years, we've done this so long now that we have a kid that's grown up with us on the mat. Mm-hmm. They come into the instructor program, do fantastic. And around, upper high school to college, they kind of go, I don't know, I feel burned out, or I want to try something different. And they go out in the real world and get a real job for a while. And we cross paths. A lot of times they don't call us back, sadly, but sometimes they do. We'll cross paths with them somewhere. Hey, how's that new career? How's that new job? And the comment is, I didn't realize what I had. I didn't realize how great it was where we were. And I've had a lot of those guys come back and, be like, can I come back home? Like, absolutely. We have a place for you. Home. Let's go. And remember, toxicity in the building is bigger than one person, right? So when there is one toxic person, it will affect everybody. Is kind of the way I see that. So sometimes you have to step in kind of hard and make that a hard decision. A little bit of a game plan. Just remember, catch your conflict early. Make sure you take it private. Don't attack anything. Again, public praise, private reprimand, but catch it early. Cut it off before it becomes a cancer in the building and gets out of control, before it metastasizes to every program and everything that you have.
And then teach your staff to handle it professionally. To handle any right now in the middle of class is not the time to figure it out. It's like, okay, after class, we'll talk about this after class. Let's give these people that are on the mat right now the best experience we absolutely can, and then we'll hash out any kind of disagreements or difficulties or challenges, or question why why did you do X, or why did you do why did you do this set instead of that set? When we'll handle that after, when everybody's gone and out of the building.
All right. So handling the coaching them, or just remember that when a lot of our staff are, they're kind of young. So we're coaching them, for lack of better words, not just solving the problem, but trying to help them to be better so they don't have it again. And those are that's transferable. Whatever career they move to later in life, these will be things. So remember the importance of that. And I think another thing too is set the standard, inspect what you expect. And stick to it. Stick to your guns. Stick strong to your boundaries and your structure and how everything works in your business, and make sure that you're leading by example. So
and I think I think back to, as we've it's kind of funny because we are talking about this, and it's like we have always been doing it this way. And I have to be 100% transparent and say, absolutely not. Because I can remember, and it was absolutely, I would have said it was because I was so confident, but it was false confidence. It was, I need everybody to know that I'm the authority and I'm the boss, and everybody look at me. And it was so this is really the flip side of that, but I didn't want to admit that. And, maybe now I'm just admitting it. But anyway, I would come in and see something going on in a class and be like, oh, I'm going to tag in, hey, like just jump in and try to. So what did I do by allowing that? By doing it myself. I just made that instructor look like they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Well, am I in every single class? Well, if I want to not necessarily have to be, I want to be, but if I don't want it to be an absolute requirement for me to be in that class, every single class, well, there's a point where there's no scalability if I'm the one, if whatever, me saying whoever the instructor is has to be in every single class. There's no, you can only scale so much.
Right.
So if I'm the ultimate authority, me stepping in there and disrupting their whole class just took their authority and dropped it down. I just made myself be the one that, and I just messed on them, made them look bad.
Not to mention their confidence too.
Absolutely. I just trucked their confidence. Now they sure don't want to try to lead a class by themselves because they know, then they're constantly looking over their shoulder to see, they're looking for your approval
right.
instead of being confident in themselves. So by allowing that kind of mentality, that kind of
just not understanding the whole perspective before you step in, I think is we call it, I tell the team now all the time, don't walk in and get a snapshot and make a snap judgment.
Right.
And the snapshot is I see 35 seconds of class and kind of go, what the heck are they doing? And I've talked about this in the podcast before. I've also been guilty of that.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm tagging in, or hey, you need to change this, kind of publicly, shaming them in front of parents. Stealing all of their confidence, later to have them explain to me, hey, we had done this, this, and this. That's why I was at that point.
We were transitioning.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry I stepped in on you and did that to you, right? So what we've learned is get some perspective first. Don't make a snapshot in your head of that room and a snap judgment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold off and be cautious. Just remember, and that's true of this conflict situation. You see one little indicator of a possible conflict, don't snap on that, unless it was harsh. They just blatant. If you see them, roll their eyes once, you just go, okay, I kind of note that. I'm just watching for a few days to see what's going on. Again, that would be a snapshot. I catch one snap and ask them, hey, why'd you roll your eyes? And they go, I got dirt in my eye, right? Like they literally have a reason. So anyway, I know that's silly, but just don't snapshot. Just remember, leadership is not running your business, entrepreneurship. None of this is about avoiding conflict. It's about how you handle it.
Yeah.
And one thing I say to people all the time, I just recently with one of our staff members, had a little bit of a bump, and we put our heads together and we talked through it, and everything was great. But I told them in that process, I said, this is inevitable. This is going to happen sometimes.
Yep.
The test of our true relationship is how do we come through it? How do we handle it? And I think it's super important that we keep that in mind. And I'll remind you one more time too, most of the time we're all on the same page. We want the same things.
We really do.
We're just short-sighted, or there's personality involved. There's something off that we can handle and we can fix. So stay calm, stay clear, stay emotionally centered, and always protect your culture. The word protect may sound a little harsh, but as the owner and the leader, chief instructor, or whatever that position is, you do have to protect that culture. You can't let the cancer run wild if it happens. So hopefully you guys enjoy that and got some good nuggets. That was awesome. Good feedback.
Absolutely.
Good nuggets from you. Thank you. You guys, if you want to see, if you're visual, go to YouTube, pick up on the podcast, write us a review. We really, really, really need reviews. We need ratings, things like that on Apple, on your podcast outlets, wherever those are. And just let us know, shoot us a message if there's anything you want to hear about or some thoughts, if you're enjoying it or not. Sometimes when we have radio silence, we're kind of wondering, are people enjoying this or not? So we'd love to hear back from you guys. So we're thankful for you and hope you guys have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Team Chip Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget, subscribe, share, and or leave a review, because we need you. We appreciate you so much. And without you, we can't make this happen. Remember, consistency is the key to success. So go out there and never be outworked.